Welcome back to the Growth Hack Franchise Marketing Unleashed. I'm Marcus, founder of AdCloud, where we help franchise brands grow with strategy that works in real life, not just in pitch decks. And today's topic is something that makes a lot of business owners pause. What happens when you hand over our entire lead up to AI? No human text, no manual replies, just automation, owning the full conversation from click to confirmed appointment. We decided to run the test for 30 days across multiple locations. AI handled every single lead from our paid campaigns. There was no backup plan, no human safety net. It responded with natural language, smart booking logic, personalized real-time follow-ups, all without a person ever picking up the phone. And here's what happened. We had 73% of leads converted to booked appointments. 62% of those conversations happened after hours, which I think is a really interesting note. And complaints about lead quality were down 4%. So the question isn't just, can AI do it? The question is it doing it better than your human team? McKinsey's with me today to unpack what we learned, what surprised us, and what this means for how franchises and businesses handle growth going forward.
Okay, Marcus, let's talk risk first. What made you confident enough to hand it all over to AI? I mean, this obviously isn't a tiny tweak. This was huge, and you didn't just test it on one or two leads. What gave you the green light to do this?
Yeah, well, I'm not very risk adverse. I mean, I'm always open to trying. I've always been a firm believer in technology, the ability for it to make things more efficient. I think as AI gets smarter and smarter and we get smarter at developing it and programming it. Actually, I'm going to go back a step. I think that majority of people use AI to like 0.5% of its potential. I think that it is shockingly far more powerful than any of us could ever imagine. Most just know it for Chat GPT, and they think that that is God's gift to the world. Like it is the holy grail of everything. However, there's so much more that it can do, AI agents, et cetera. In marketing, if you look back over the history of advertising and marketing, it oftentimes has taken a long time to transition to new forms of marketing. I mean, look how long newspaper advertising and those types of things went on until people were like, okay, they're not really like there's much better ways to do it. And it was all about getting in front of people where they were. And I think as we transition more to technology being at the forefront, still looking at, okay, this human element, how do we remove that? One, for cost savings, but two, for instant gratification. And I think marketing has to transition with how society is thinking about things and doing things and interacting with things. And there is no human on the planet that can be awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to engage with that consumer whenever they choose to in different time zones, whatever that may be. There's no one who can do that and do it with pure efficiency and do it the same every time. And I think that's maybe the biggest point of it all is you can have a team of 10 people, but those 10 people are not going to pitch the same way. They're not going to give the experience the same way. They're not going to answer the questions the same way. And for us, we know that if we can have a program that does this, our data is cleaner. Then we can really understand trends and how things are working. And so was it a risk? Sure. But it was a risk worth taking because if it worked right and if it worked well, it would change the game as far as what lead follow-up traditionally looks like. And there's so many that are still doing this like manual engagement and AI bots that are halfway programmed to ask some questions, but you still need human interaction. Full autonomous AI engagement, answering in real time, booking in real time, not something that is kind of band-aided together, but you still need someone to finish it off and complete that booking. And so it was well worth going into it with an open mind and saying, hey, let's give this a run. And, the chances of it being great were pretty high. And so I think it made that risk worth it.
How did the AI conversion rates actually stack up against the locations with the human managed follow-up? Let's just compare apples to apples. Was the human touch actually helping, or was it just slowing things down?
I think overall it was slowing things down because you can only reply so quickly, especially for a brand like ours where we're generating a ton of leads a day. When we looked at conversion rates prior to having autonomous AI in the funnel, our conversion was maybe in the 30% range. When you consider SMS follow up, email follow up, hopefully you have two-way SMS. Prior to AI, everything was like, hey, Marcus, here's your intro offer. Go visit your website.com and book your appointment. That was the extent. Unless you had phone calls in there, and now naturally you can do phone calls. How many of us actually answer the phone when a random number calls? There are some hacks to that. If you're doing phone calls, text first with your name and then call from the same number so that it shows and it says, hey, it's maybe Marcus calling, which again, I think that's a hack that everyone should use if you have phone calling in your wheelhouse or in your funnel. But when we looked at the data of like when our leads were coming in, a lot of them were coming in the late evening and overnight. I think our highest lead count was actually around 11 to 11:30 p.m. So when we started to look at that, we're like, well, no one's staffed at that point. So now they're not being serviced. And I would say this is 95% of businesses. All of those leads aren't being serviced until the next morning. People have gone to sleep. They forgot they even submitted the form. And that's what we were seeing. People were saying, oh, I don't remember submitting the form. I don't remember. It's because in that instance, they were there and then they didn't hear anything. There was nothing given to them. Now, when you submit at 11:30, at 11:31, you have a text message that's like, hey, like we're excited to see you in the studio. Hopefully tomorrow we have a 10:30 a.m. with Sarah. Let's get you booked. And you're booked in 3 minutes and then you can go to sleep. It's so efficient that I think that is where it really performs far better than having that human element. Now, that's not to say that people don't still want support and all of that. We're talking about full marketing funnel. I'm not talking about support teams. I'm not talking about current client support and membership management. I'm talking about you see an ad, you submit a lead form. Our number one goal is to get you to book an appointment as quickly as possible. And that is where I think the human side of it is just not overly efficient to get it there. And it doesn't mean you can't have some of those other things, but you really have to leverage that. And so we threw that test out there and said, okay, what if we gave it all over? We took ourselves out of the equation and we just watched the data and it outperformed. We went from 30% on average booking rates to 70 to 80%, and varies by platform. But it clearly showed us that people liked the instantaneous gratification, the feeling of not having to go to a website to book your appointment and go through the menu and figure out what you want to do and enter all your information, especially for how we're integrated. Because when you enter your name, email, phone number, you get that text. But in that same moment, in a 15-second period of you submitting that information, your account is already created in the booking software. So there's no need for you to now go and create an account. Your profile's created. So all you have to do is say, yes, 10:30 a.m. on Monday works for me, or what do you have on Friday? And it gives you some options. Cool, great. Okay, so we have you confirmed for 10:30 a.m. on Friday with Sarah. Does this work? Yes. And you're done. There's nothing more that you need to do as the consumer. And that I think is where we have seen like people love that experience. The biggest push to this was really during COVID. We started to see like furniture brands transition to AI on the customer support side. And with an industry as old and stale, the furniture industry, when you start to see them make moves into tech and AI, you're like, okay, everything is really changing. And obviously we saw major changes in people's shift to tech there. I mean, people who had never heard of Zoom start using Zoom as if it was this newfound thing that a lot of us had been using in the tech world for many years. That's when we started to see that transition and started to kind of look at how can we implement this in. I'll be completely transparent. There was a lot of doubters for sure. You can't take the human element out of it. Everyone wants to talk to a human. Everyone, now some of these were boomers, but we need that interaction. People want that interaction. No, they don't. They don't want it unless they want to cancel their membership maybe. But I would still argue, I have a lot of memberships and I would prefer to cancel all of them digitally instead of talking to someone. I mean, you know me, I have held on to memberships at certain places. I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to go in there and talk to somebody because I don't want to be sold again. I just want to cancel it. I would argue that most consumers wish they could just one click and be done with it and put it on pause. But I think one of the barriers was that people thought that they were referring to what we were doing as like this AI bot. And there's a very big difference between autonomous human AI and a bot that I have coded in to say, okay, when Marcus comes in as a lead, give him these 4 questions. And if he answers to this question, I'll branch it to here and then give this slated response. Our AI, it doesn't matter what I say when it comes in, it understands my tone, how I'm phrasing the questions, and can answer based on that and change in the split of a second to give you the resolve. Even if I want to book, but I have a question about the service or the product, it can answer those questions about that. Like, hey, what's the difference between X and Y? And it can answer those and then flow back into that booking flow. And so that I think is where we had to do some educating and say, this is vastly different than what you knew in the past and what people were building with bots and et cetera. And it changed the complete landscape of how we market today on lead follow-up and lead engagement. And it has dropped our booking conversion time by almost 70%. I mean, now like our average booking happens within 5 to 6 minutes, which is huge when we look at how people are engaging and what they're doing. And that tells us that people want to be able to have that instant gratification. They don't want to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes going through some weird funnel. And we see this with some tech softwares where you go online to book and you've got to create an account before you can even select the service, before you can even book and enter your credit card info. We just ran this test a couple weeks ago through a point of sale software that requires this for the client. And it took maybe 13 minutes because you had to go and enter in all your information. Then it sends you an email with your login information. Then you have to go back and log in. And then you can finally see where you can book the services. And I was like, who wants to do that? Nobody wants, you've practically filed your taxes before you've been able to book an appointment. And I think that is where there's systems out there that are still so broken. But then you'll have business owners like, well, why is conversion so far down? I don't understand. And the first thing we say is if it takes any more than 5 minutes for someone to book, realistically 90 seconds, most people are going to bounce. It should be an easy process. And there's no reason why it can't be with all of the technology that we have at our fingertips today.
So when you did make the switch over to only AI, did you have any weird cases where AI just kind of blew it? Like, does this happen where, you're looking over things and you saw kind of a bizarre response, or did it ever overpromise or confuse a lead or anything like that? Or does it just not make mistakes?
Yeah, it would be foolish for me to say that AI doesn't make mistakes. I think in any technology, there's a training period. And so anytime we onboard a new brand, there's a period where we have to train and understand all the different nuances of how a brand interacts, what their questions are, what are common questions the consumers are asking, because we want to make sure that we kind of stay ahead of that. But yeah, so I mean, in the early days, for sure, there was just poke and prodding of like, okay, how do we best answer this? Like a perfect example in the sauna light therapy space. A question that we never even saw coming was like, I'm 6 months pregnant. Can I do infrared sauna? We just didn't think that would be like an overly asked question. And it is asked a ton of times. Now, the AI is programmed to say like, hey, if I can't answer this question because it's just not in the Rolodex of what I understand, at that point, it can be escalated to someone to help the front desk. Again, that's about 1% of the time across thousands and thousands of leads managed every week, maybe 1%. And some of that may be like things around business wants. If they ask about membership cancellation or membership management, they want to still manage that manually. So those things get escalated. But when we bring on new brands, there is a learning phase where we're just figuring out, okay, what are these commonalities? What are the nuances? Every brand does things a little differently. But overall, I would say you plug and play and you're already 90% there. there's about a 10% fluctuation of figuring out certain dial-ins. To me, if a brand came in today, I mean, we realistically, if I didn't want to sleep, we could launch it by tomorrow and it would be 90% there. If you can show me a human that you could hire today and say, hey, I need you to start taking these leads tomorrow, that would be fully ready to go and be able to convert at the same metric that it's doing for other brands with minor fluctuation. It's not possible. So you not only can implement faster, but you know what to expect as a baseline at that 90% mark. And I think that's where we kind of look at that and say, okay, the risk is worth the reward. I would rather be at 90% than 10% and wondering, is so-and-so following up with them every time? Are they getting in touch with them fast enough? The human management just becomes so hard when you compare the two.
It probably gives business owners a lot more control in that aspect because they know what AI is giving people. I think with someone that you've hired, you never really know what they're gonna say or what their response is gonna be. So I would think that amount of control and I guess being guaranteed of, hey, here's what is gonna be pitched every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. And for testing, it's far better because we can build and say, okay, it was pitched this way. Should we pitch it a different way? Because we know it's been pitched the same way 5,000 times. When you add humans into that, we just don't know. I mean, we look at membership sales in a studio. You have one person who can convert at 80%. They pitch really well. And then you have others who are terrible at it. Now, is it because they don't know how to sell? Is it their tone? Is it their friendliness? Is it that they're not trying, that they're not doing it? Those things are so hard to track and understand. And the bandwidth it takes to hire someone new and hope that this new person is going to get it. And if they don't, then you have to go back and hire someone new, hope that they're going to get it and be good at it. We learn from thousands of leads and then we implement different changes. We're always optimizing how it engages, what it does, different things that we're seeing, how it pitches certain questions, how it asks certain questions. So those things are constantly being optimized, but we know that when we put it in place, it does it every time the same way. No matter who you are, what brand you're coming in for, what offer you're coming for, it's doing it the same way. So when it spits out a data report and that says, hey, this sequence converted 11% more, we know that it is true to that statement that everyone received it the same way. And that's factual data, not based on so-and-so had a good day today. They had a little extra coffee. And so they were like closing the deals, but tomorrow they realized, they were mediocre. That is not a functional, scalable part of it without stress and a lot of gray hair and losing your mind trying to figure out what's happening because you are reliant on someone else's mood that day and their ability to pitch your product the way that you would as the founder and owner. And ultimately at the end, no one's going to care more about your business than you are. So trying to think that you could get someone and hire someone that's going to do that and present it that same way would be borderline crazy to me. And so really, I think that is where AI outperforms 10 out of 10.
So after this test, I assume I know the answer to this, but do you still believe that AI follow-up should be monitored or unleashed? Should people be scared to go full AI, or is that just an old school hesitation?
Yeah. So what does this test really prove? It's not just that AI can follow up. It's that AI can follow through faster, more consistently, and without burnout. It didn't miss a single message. It booked more appointments while your team was asleep, getting ready for the next day. And it sounded like a human because we built it to care like one. And I think that's really important. Here's the bottom line. You don't have to choose between automation or authenticity. You just need a system that protects your brand, respects your leads, and responds before they lose interest. If you're still trying to get back to people later, you're playing a game that already moved on. Thanks for listening to The Growth Hack. If this episode challenged your thinking, follow the show, drop us a review, and send this to someone who's still answering leads one text at a time. We'll be back next week with another test, another takeaway, and zero fluff.